The sun was a golden eye, and Icarus was flying straight into it. He felt the joy swell in his chest, a feeling so pure and powerful that it drowned out everything else. He was no longer a boy, no longer a prisoner. He was a god. He could feel the heat on his face, but it felt like a warm welcome. It felt like acceptance. Far below, his father, Daedalus, was a small dot against the vast blue sheet of the Aegean Sea. His father was shouting something. Icarus could barely hear him over the rush of the wind. The words were thin and meaningless. Too high. You are flying too high. Why would his father chain him to the middle air? The middle air was for cautious old men. The sky, the true sky, the home of the sun god Apollo, was for heroes. Icarus beat his wings harder, the magnificent wings his father had made from feathers and wax. He rose higher and higher. Then, the heat was no longer a warm welcome. It became a burning hand. Icarus smelled it before he felt it. The sharp, stinging smell of burning feathers. He glanced at his shoulder. The wax, his father's brilliant invention, was turning to liquid. It ran down his arms in hot, golden streams. A large feather, one of the main supports, tore free. It spiraled past his face, black and burning at the tip. Panic, cold and sharp, replaced the joy. He tried to flap his arms, but the wings were losing their shape. They were becoming a sticky, useless mess. He was not a god. He was just a boy, a foolish boy covered in melting wax that he shouted his father's name. Father! But the wind stole the word. He began to fall. He tumbled end over end, the sky spinning around him. The sun laughed at him from above, and the sea waited for him below. He saw his father flying toward him, his face a mask of horror, but he was too far away. Icarus closed his eyes, waiting for the cold, final splash of the sea. He waited to die, but the water never came. Instead, he felt a strange, tingling sensation, like passing through a cold fog. The air pressure changed. The rushing sound in his ears became a deafening roar, but it was a different kind of roar. It was not the wind. It was something else, something hard and metallic. He crashed. He hit something solid, something that did not yield like water. He felt a terrible, breaking pain in his back and his legs, and then the world went black. His first thought when he woke was that he was in Hades. The air was foul. It smelled of burnt food and poison smoke. The ground was not sand or soft earth. It was hard, black stone, gritty with dirt. He was lying in a narrow canyon made of dark red brick, filled with metal barrels and mountains of black, spilling bags. He groaned and tried to sit up. Pain flared across his back, where the wings had been ripped away. The skin felt raw and burnt. He was still Icarus, he thought. He was alive. But where was he? He heard a sound, a loud, angry horn. He crawled on his hands and knees, ignoring the sharp bits of glass that cut into his palms. He looked out of the narrow canyon, which he would later learn was called an alley. He saw monsters. They were huge, metal beasts, painted in bright, shiny colors. They moved faster than any horse, roaring as they passed. Inside their clear, glass eyes he could see people. The people were not afraid. They seemed to be controlling the beasts. Icarus shrank back against the wall. His heart pounded in his chest. The buildings were not the white stone structures of Crete. They were impossibly tall, reaching into the sky like the Tower of Babel. Their walls made entirely of shining glass that reflected the clouds. People rushed past on the stone walkways. Their clothes were strange. The men wore tight blue leg coverings instead of tunics. The women were barely dressed at all, in clothes that were loud with color. Everyone was moving fast, no one looking at the sky. No one looked at each other. Many held small, black rectangles in their hands, staring at them as if they held an oracle that a woman saw him. She was walking a small, furry creature on a rope. She looked at Icarus, at his simple linen tunic, his bare feet, his bleeding hands, and the raw, burnt skin on his back. Her face did not show pity. It showed disgust. She pulled her furry creature closer and walked faster. Icarus pushed himself into the shadows of the alley. He was cold, in terrible pain, and more alone than he had ever been in his father's tower. This was not his world. The gods had played a cruel trick. He had not just fallen from the sky. He had fallen out of his time. He was a myth. He was a ghost. And he was starving. The pain was a living thing. It crawled up his spine, a fire that centered on his burnt shoulder blades. But the pain was soon overshadowed by a new, sharper feeling, hunger. It was a hollow, aching need that twisted his stomach. In the tower he had always eaten. His father, Daedalus, was a genius, and King Minos had provided for them, his favored prisoners. They had bread, cheese, olives, and fish. It was simple, but it was food. Here the smells were different. The air was thick with the scent of burnt meat, old fish, and something sweet and rotting. The hunger drove him from the shadows of the alley. He had to eat. He saw a metal door in the brick wall. A man in a white, stained apron came out and threw a large, clear bag into a huge metal box. The smell that hit Icarus was wonderful. It was the smell of cooked food. He waited until the man went back inside. His heart hammered against his ribs, not with the joy of flight, but with the low fear of a thief. He limped to the metal box. It was tall, and he had to use his bleeding hands to pull himself up onto a wooden crate to look inside. The bag was full of food. He saw bread, still good, pieces of meat, and strange yellow sticks. It was more food than he had seen in a week. He reached in, his hands trembling. He pulled out a piece of bread and a half-eaten yellow stick. "Hey, get out of there!" A voice, loud and angry, boomed behind him. Icarus spun around, dropping the bread. The man in the white apron was back. His face was red and twisted in anger. He held a long wooden stick. "I said, get out. Go on, beat it. Filthy animal!" The man shouted. Icarus did not understand the words. The sounds were harsh, like rocks grinding together. But he understood the tone. He understood the raised stick. This was not a welcome. He raised his hands, palms forward, trying to show he meant no harm. "Please," Icarus said in his own language, Greek. "I am hungry. I am lost." The man's face just got angrier. "What? You speak in garbage? I don't care. Go. Before I call the police." The man pointed a small black rectangle at him, the same kind the people on the street held. But he held it like a weapon, pushing at the small squares on its face. Icarus felt a new kind of fear. This world was full of magic he did not understand. He backed away, his hunger forgotten, replaced by terror. He slipped on the greasy ground and scrambled to his feet, running back into the street. The man watched him go, then cursed and threw the wooden stick to the ground. "Crazy," he muttered, and went back inside. Icarus hid in the shadow of a different building, watching. He watched for hours. He was a good observer. His father had taught him to watch the birds, to see how their wings caught the air. Now he watched these new humans. He learned. He saw that the green paper was the most important thing. People gave the paper to other people, and in return they received food or clothes or entrance into buildings. He saw a man give the green paper to another man at a small metal cart, and he received a piece of cooked meat on a stick. The smell was torment. He learned that the small black rectangles were not weapons. They were oracles, just as he thought. People talked to them, listened to them, and stared at them constantly. They were more important than the people standing right next to them. He learned that he was invisible. Thousands of people walked past his hiding place. They hurried, their faces set in masks of worry or anger. They did not look at the sky. They did not look at the dirty boy in the strange tunic hiding by the stone wall. He was part of the grit, part of the grime, no different from the black bags of trash he had first woken up in. As the sun began to set, the city changed. The glass towers that had reflected the clouds now began to glow from within. They became magic pillars of light. The metal monsters on the street turned on their own bright, white eyes, 2 by 2. The world was not dark. It was a new kind of day, a day made of a million false stars. The air grew cold. His thin tunic was useless against the chill that seeped from the stone. His hunger had returned, a constant, dull ache. He saw a woman walk by, eating from a paper bag. She pulled out a large, twisted piece of bread covered in salt. She took a bite, made a face, and tossed the rest of it into a wire basket on the street corner. Icarus waited. He watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd. He looked at the wire basket. He felt his face burn with shame. He was the son of Daedalus. He had flown. He had touched the sun. He was also starving. He darted from his hiding place, his movements quick like a rat. He reached into the basket, his fingers brushing against sticky, wet paper. He grabbed the twisted bread. It was still warm. He ran back to the alley, his heart pounding. He hid behind the metal barrels and ate. He ate like a wolf, tearing at the bread. The salt stung his lips. It was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted. He licked his fingers clean, desperate for every crumb. When the bread was gone, the hunger remained, but the sharp edge was gone. The cold, however, was worse. He needed shelter. The alley was as good as any place. He found several large, flat pieces of stiff brown paper. They were stiff and cold, but they were a barrier. He crawled behind the largest metal box, which smelled terrible but blocked the wind. He covered himself with the flat paper. It was a poor imitation of a blanket. He lay there, his body aching, his stomach half full, and his mind spinning. He looked up. Between the impossible cliffs of the brick buildings, he could see a small patch of sky. It was a deep, dark purple, not the clear blue of his island home. He searched for the stars. He tried to find the hunter, the bull, the seven sisters. He saw nothing. The city's light was too bright. It had stolen the stars, just as it had stolen his life. A new kind of despair, colder than the wind, settled over him. His father was gone. His world was gone. The sun had not killed him. It had thrown him into a different kind of hell. He heard a high, thin sound. A wail. It sounded like a baby crying. He looked around and saw two tiny, green lights shining at him from the darkness. A small, black cat padded out from behind a barrel. It was thin, its ribs showing. It looked at Icarus and made the crying sound again. Icarus stared at the cat. It was the first living thing in this new world that did not seem to be a monster. It was small, and it was hungry, just like him. He had nothing to give it. "I have nothing," he whispered, his own Greek words feeling strange on his tongue. The cat just stared. Icarus closed his eyes. The pain, the hunger, and the crushing weight of this new world pulled him down. He fell into a restless, troubled sleep, the cat his only guard, in a land that did not know his name. For 3 days Icarus lived in the alley. He learned the rhythms of the new world. He learned that the early morning was for the giant, roaring green monsters that ate the black bags of trash. He learned that the days were for noise and rushing people. He learned that the nights were for the cold, the loneliness, and the thin, black cat that had become his only companion. He had named it Skia, the Greek word for shadow. Skia was a better hunter than he was. It would disappear for hours and return with a small mouse or a piece of discarded meat. Icarus survived on what he could find in the wire baskets, which he now knew were called trash cans. He found half-eaten sandwiches, hard-crusted pizza, and sometimes a bottle of water that still had a few sips left. His health was returning. The burns on his back were scabbing over, though they pulled painfully every time he moved. The cuts on his hands and feet were healing, turning into hard calluses. He was a creature of the alley now, but his mind, the mind of the son of Daedalus, was sharp. He was not just surviving, he was learning. He listened. He sat just out of sight, wrapped in his brown paper, and listened to the strange, harsh language. First it was just noise, but soon, patterns emerged. He learned the word hello, a short, sharp sound people made when they first saw each other. He learned bye, a sadder, longer sound. He learned please and thank you, which were almost always said very fast or not at all. He learned the sound of money, which was often paired with an angry or a desperate tone. He learned love and hate, and he was surprised at how often they sounded the same. On the 4th day, the rain came. It was not the warm, brief rain of Crete. It was a cold, gray, and endless downpour. The water turned his alley into a cold river. His paper blanket dissolved into a pulpy mess. The wind had teeth and bit through his thin, damp tunic. Skia was gone, hidden somewhere dry. Icarus was colder than he had ever been. He was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. A rapid, painful rhythm. He knew, with a terrifying certainty, that he could not survive a night of this. The tower, his prison, had been warm. This new world, this freedom was going to kill him. He had to move. He stumbled out of the alley, his bare feet splashing in the icy water on the pavement. The metal monsters still roared past, spraying him with dirty water. The people hurried by, hidden under umbrellas, which looked like 1,000 black, mechanical bat wings. He saw a building across the street. It was not a glass tower. It was old, made of stone, with a large, heavy wooden door. Above the door was a glowing sign made of red light, twisted into strange letters. But in the window there was a picture. It was a drawing of a cup, with steam rising from it. Icarus knew steam. Steam meant hot. Hot meant life. He did not think. He ran. He dodged one of the metal beasts, which shrieked at him with a loud horn. He reached the wooden door and pulled. It was heavy, but it opened. He fell inside in a puddle of cold water. The warmth hit him like a physical blow. It was a small room, filled with the smell of roasted beans and sweet bread. It was full of people sitting at small wooden tables. They all stopped talking. They all turned to look at him. He was a terrible sight. A half-naked boy, his hair matted with filth, his tunic stained and torn, his feet blue with cold, and a puddle of rainwater forming around him. "Oh my God!" A woman whispered. A large man with a white apron, a different man from the alley, came from behind a loud, hissing metal machine. His face was kind, but his eyes were firm. "Son, you can't be in here," he said, his voice slow and deep. "You're scaring my customers." Icarus looked at him, his mind racing. He needed to speak. He needed to use the new words. He pushed himself to his knees. The warmth was making the shaking worse. "Please," he said. The word felt strange, a pebble in his mouth. "Please." The man's expression softened. He looked at the boy's blue lips. "You're freezing," the man said. He looked around. "Go on, folks. Finish your coffee." He turned back to Icarus. "Are you hungry?" Icarus did not know the word hungry, but he knew his stomach was empty. He pointed to his mouth. "Food," he said, using another word he had heard. "Please, food." "Lumensight." He went behind the counter and grabbed a large, brown, sweet-smelling roll from a glass case. He also filled a paper cup with hot water. He came back and knelt. "Here," he said, handing the roll to Icarus. "Eat this, slowly." Icarus took the roll. He did not eat it like a wolf this time. He looked the man in the eyes. He said the other word, the important one. "Thank you." The man smiled, a small, sad smile. "You're welcome, kid." He pushed the cup of hot water toward him. "Drink this. Just water. It's hot. It'll warm you up." Icarus held the cup. The heat was a miracle. It sank into his frozen hands, a feeling so good it almost made him cry. He sipped the water. It burned all the way down to his stomach, chasing out the cold. "What's your name?" the man asked. Icarus looked at him, confused. "Name," the man said and pointed to his own chest. "My name is Saul." He pointed at Icarus. "Your name." Icarus understood. He pointed to his own chest. "Icarus," he said. Sal frowned, trying to hear the name right. "Okay, what? Icarus?" "Icarus." The boy repeated, slower. "Icarus. Huh? That's a new one." "Well, Icarus, you can't stay here. You can finish that roll and the water, but then you've got to go." "I'm sorry. I can't have you in here." Icarus did not understand all the words, but he understood go. He nodded. He ate the roll quickly and drank all the hot water. The food and the warmth were a powerful combination. The shaking in his limbs finally stopped. He felt human again. He stood up. He looked at Sal, at the warm room, at the people staring at him. He knew what he had to do. He pointed at the hissing, steaming metal machine behind the counter. "Work," he said. It was a word he had heard over and over. "I work for food." Sal's eyebrows shot up. He stared at the boy. This thin, strange kid with a G and Roman name was offering to work. He looked at the floor, where Icarus had tracked in a river of mud and water. "You work," Sal said. "What can you do?" Icarus pointed at the dirty floor. "Clean." He pointed at the tables, which were covered in empty cups. "Clean." Sal looked at the floor, and then back at the boy. He was about to say no. He ran a business. But something in the boy's eyes stopped him. It was not begging. It was pride. It was the same look he saw in his own grandfather's eyes. A man who had come from another country with nothing but his own 2 hands. "All right, Icarus," Sal said, making a decision that would change both their lives. "Here's the deal. You clean this mess. You wash all these tables. You can stay in the back, by the heater until the rain stops. And I will give you another one of these rolls." Icarus understood clean, and he understood roll. He nodded a sharp, quick motion. "Yes, thank you." Sal went to a back room and returned with a mop and a bucket. He showed Icarus how to use them. Icarus learned fast. He was the son of the world's greatest inventor. A mop was a simple machine. He cleaned the floor until the tiles shined. He washed every table. He stacked the cups. He worked for 2 hours. He did not stop, not even for a second. When he was done, the small cafe, as he would learn it was called, was spotless. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle. Sal watched him the whole time. He had never seen a boy work so hard. He gave Icarus 2 more rolls and a cup of hot, sweet chocolate. "You're a good worker, Icarus," Sal said. "The rain is stopping. You have to go." Icarus nodded. He took the food. He was warm. He was full. He walked to the door. "Wait," Sal called out. Icarus turned. "Come back tomorrow," Sal said. 9 o'clock. In the morning. I'll have more work for you. You understand? Tomorrow. Icarus understood. Tomorrow. He said the word. It was the first time he had ever thought about a tomorrow in this world. It was a word that meant hope. That he pushed open the door and walked out into the cold, gray city. But it was no longer a place of monsters. It was a place where he had a job. Icarus walked back to his alley with a straight back. He was no longer just a scavenger. He was a worker. He had earned his food. In his hand, he held the 2 sweet rolls, still warm, wrapped in a paper napkin. The cold, damp air did not feel as sharp as it had before. He found Skia, the black cat, huddled under the metal box, which he now knew was called a dumpster. The cat was wet and shivering. "I am back, little shadow," Icarus whispered, sitting on the dry pavement he had protected with his flat paper. He tore off a piece of the sweet roll. "And I have food. We have food." He placed the piece of bread on the ground. The cat crept forward, sniffing. It nibbled, then ate the piece quickly. Icarus smiled and gave it another. He ate his own roll slowly, making it last. He was not just feeding his body. He was feeding the small, new flame of hope inside him. That night, he slept under the dumpster, covered in his paper boards. But the sleep was different. It was not the sleep of a hunted animal, waiting for the sun to bring new terrors. It was the sleep of a laborer, a man who had a place to be in the morning. He was awake before the sun. The sky was a pale, sick gray, not the vibrant pink and gold of his island home. He found a puddle of rainwater that was relatively clean and washed his face and hands. He tried to flatten his matted hair. He wanted to look ready for work. He arrived at the cafe while the sky was still dark. The wooden door was locked. The lights were off. For a moment, a cold fear gripped him. Had it been a dream? Had the kind man, Sal, been a figment of his hungry mind? He sat on the cold step, his knees drawn to his chest, and waited. At an hour later, a large metal monster, a truck, pulled up. Sal got out, holding a set of metal keys. He looked surprised to see Icarus waiting. "You're early, kid," Sal said, unlocking the heavy door. "But that's good. That's real good. Come on in. It's cold." Icarus followed him into the dark, quiet cafe. Sal moved with a familiar rhythm. He turned on the lights. He started the loud, hissing coffee machine. The smell of roasted beans filled the air. "All right, Icarus," Sal said, handing him the mop and bucket from the back room. "The floor, just like yesterday. Make it shine before the first customers get here." And so the routine began. Every morning, Icarus arrived before the sun. He mopped the floor. He wiped down every table and every chair. He cleaned the glass door until it was free of fingerprints. Sal would give him a hot chocolate and a roll for breakfast. Then the customers would come, and Icarus would retreat to the back room. It was a small, hot room filled with metal shelves, big bags of flour, and a huge, deep silver sink. Sal taught him his next job: dishes. For hours, Icarus stood at the sink, his hands in hot, soapy water. He washed every cup, every plate, and every piece of silver. He learned to scrub them until they were perfectly clean. He learned to stack them carefully so they would dry. It was hard work. The steam made him sweat, and his back ached. But he loved it. He loved the purpose. He loved the noise of the cafe, the murmur of voices, the clatter of plates. He was a part of the machine that made this place run. He was still a ghost, but he was a useful ghost. He learned the language at an incredible speed. The cafe was his school. He listened to Sal talk to the customers. He listened to the radio, a box on the shelf that played music and, more importantly, news. The news taught him the name of his new world. He was not in Hades. He was in a place called America. He was in a city called New York. He learned 1,000 new words: car, bus, police, apartment, president, war. He learned that the year was not the time of King Minos. It was 2025. He had fallen through time itself. Sal was his first and only friend. The man was kind. He never asked Icarus where he came from. He just seemed to understand that the boy had nowhere else to go. Sal paid him in food. Breakfast, lunch, and a bag of food to take home for dinner. One day, after about 2 weeks, the weather turned very cold. A hard wind blew down the street, and the rain turned to a hard white sleet. Icarus arrived at the cafe shaking, his thin Greek tunic, now just a collection of gray rags, frozen stiff. Sal took one look at him and cursed. "You can't," he said. "You just can't keep wearing that. You're going to die of cold, kid." Sal went into the back room and returned with a small pile of clothes. "These were my son's," Sal said, his voice a little softer. "He's grown up. He doesn't need them. I hope they fit." In the pile, Icarus saw the strange blue leg coverings called jeans. He saw a thick, soft, red shirt called a sweatshirt. He saw white socks and dark, heavy shoes. "Go on," Sal said, pointing to the small bathroom. "Change, and throw those rags away." Icarus took the clothes. They were soft. He went into the small room and locked the door. He looked at his reflection in the mirror above the sink. He saw a stranger. A thin boy with wild, dark hair and terrified eyes. His skin was pale. On his back, he could see the angry, red-pink scars, shaped like the roots of wings. Slowly, he took off his tunic, the last piece of his old life. He folded it neatly and placed it on the floor. He stepped into the jeans. They were stiff and strange, a heavy armor for his legs. He pulled the sweatshirt over his head. The fleece lining was so soft, so warm, it was like being wrapped in a cloud. He put on the socks and tied the shoes, his fingers clumsy with the laces. He looked in the mirror again. Icarus was gone. The boy in the mirror was a modern boy. He looked like the other people on the street. He was hidden. He was safe. He felt a sharp, terrible wave of loss. It was a final goodbye to his father, to his home, to the sky. But he was also warm. For the first time since he fell, he was truly, deeply warm. He opened the door. Sal was waiting. The big man looked at him and nodded, his eyes sad. "One more thing, kid," Sal said. "This name, Icarus, it's a mouthful. It's tough for people. I'm gonna call you Ricky. It's easier." Icarus thought of the name. It meant nothing to him. It had no past. It had no story. It was a blank, clean name. "Ricky," he repeated, felt flat on his tongue. He nodded. "Yes, I am Ricky." Ricky was a good name. Ricky was the boy who washed dishes. Ricky was the boy who mopped the floors. Ricky was quiet, worked hard, and never complained. Sal started giving him money, the green paper that made the new world turn. It was not much, but Sal insisted. "You work, you get paid, kid. That's the rule." Icarus, the boy who fell from the sun, was a secret. He was a ghost that lived inside Ricky's new skin, a memory of a different sky. Ricky kept the memory locked away, in a place as deep and dark as the alley he had once slept in. He no longer slept in the alley. Sal had found him a place. It was a tiny room in the basement of the building next to the cafe. It belonged to the building's superintendent, a grumpy old man named Mr. Petrov, who Sal paid in cash and coffee. The room was not much bigger than a closet. It had a small hard bed called a cot, a single bare light bulb, and a small rattling heater. To Ricky it was a palace. It was warm. It was dry. It had a door that locked. For the first time since he fell, he was not a scavenger. He had a home. Skia, the cat, came with him. The little black shadow would curl up at the end of his cot, a small, purring engine of warmth. His life fell into a new, comfortable rhythm. Wake up, go to work, wash dishes, clean floors, listen, learn. In the afternoons, Sal would make him sit at one of the empty tables. "You're a smart kid, Ricky," Sal had said one day, placing a small, colorful book on the table. "But you need to learn to read, not just listen. You need to read the words." The book was for children. It had pictures of apples and balls and cats. A is for apple. B is for ball. Ricky felt a flush of shame. He was the son of Daedalus. He could read and write in his own tongue. He understood complex engineering and the laws of aerodynamics. But in this world, he was an infant. "I will learn," he said. His voice low that he attacked the book with the same focus he used on the dishes. He learned in days. The shapes of the letters were strange, but the idea was the same. A, P, P, L, E. He traced the letters. He said the words aloud. Sal brought him more books. Children's stories. Simple chapter books. Then, one day, Sal brought him a thick book with a black cover. The dictionary, Sal called it. It has all the words. Ricky held it like it was a sacred text. He spent his nights in his small basement room, with Skia purring on his lap, traveling through this new language. He learned words that amazed him. Skyscraper, a perfect word for the glass towers. Automobile, the name for the metal beasts. Electricity, the magic that ran the lights and the heaters and the coffee machine. He also learned words that frightened him. War, gun, crime, orphan. One day, he looked up a word he had heard Sal use when describing a sad story on the news. Tragedy. He read the definition. An event causing great suffering, destruction, and distress, such as a serious accident, crime, or natural catastrophe. Then he read the second definition. A play dealing with tragic events and having an unhappy ending, especially one concerning the downfall of the main character. He closed the book. He was a tragedy. His story, the one he kept locked away, was a story about the downfall of the main character. He worked at the cafe for a year. He was no longer a thin, terrified boy. He was 16 years old, or so he guessed. He was tall, and his arms were strong from lifting heavy boxes and scrubbing pots. His English was almost perfect, though he spoke with a strange, careful accent that no one could place. Sal trusted him. Ricky now worked the register, the machine that held the money. He would take the orders from the customers. Hello, welcome. What can I get you? He would say, his voice polite. I'll have a small coffee. Black. A woman would say, not looking up from her black rectangle, her phone. That will be $2. Ricky would say. He was part of the machine. He was safe. He was warm. He was fed. And he was miserable. The misery was a dull, low ache, like a phantom limb. It was the pain from the wings that were no longer there. He had traded the sky for a basement room. He had traded the sun for a single light bulb. He felt the pull of the sky every day. When he took the trash out to the dumpster in the alley, he would stand for a moment and look up. He would stare at that small patch of purple city sky. He would search for the stars that were never there. He would watch the airplanes, the new metal birds that roared high overhead, and he would feel a terrible, burning envy. They could fly. He was trapped on the ground. One afternoon, a new customer came into the cafe. She was young, about his age. She had bright red hair and was carrying a large, flat black portfolio. She ordered a tea and sat at a back table. She did not look at her phone. She opened her portfolio and pulled out large sheets of paper. They were drawings. They were blueprints. Ricky stared. He knew those lines. He knew those shapes. They were designs. They were plans for a building. He saw the precise angles, the measurements, the notes in the margins. It was his father's language. It was the language of creation. He was washing a cup, but his hands had stopped moving. He was watching her. She was drawing, her pencil moving fast, a look of intense concentration on her face. Sal bumped his shoulder. Ricky, you okay? You're staring. Ricky blinked, pulling his eyes away. Who is she? He whispered. A student, I think, Sal said, looking over. From the design school up the street. She comes in sometimes. Pretty, isn't she? Ricky did not know if she was pretty. He only knew that she was speaking a language he had almost forgotten. He dried his hands. He picked up the pot of hot coffee. He walked over to her table. His heart was pounding, a different kind of pounding. It was not fear. It was something else. Excuse me, he said. His voice was shaking, just a little. The girl looked up. She had bright green eyes, flecked with gold. You need more hot water for your tea? She asked. No, Ricky said. He pointed at her drawing. That, he said, that is a truss for the roof. But your load-bearing calculation is wrong. The girl's eyes went wide. She stared at him. What did you just say? Ricky pointed at her paper. Here, this angle. It is too weak. The stress will be too great. The snow in winter, it will make it collapse. He grabbed a napkin and Sal's pen from his apron. His hand, the hand that had only washed dishes, began to move. He did not draw a truss. He drew a wing. He drew the structure of a bird's wing, the perfect design of hollow bone and feather, the one his father had taught him. You must distribute the weight, he explained, his words coming faster. Like this. So the force is not fighting itself. So it is supported. So it can fly. He stopped, embarrassed. He looked at the napkin. It was a perfect, technical drawing of the wing that had brought him here. He looked at the girl. She was not looking at the napkin. She was looking at his face. She was looking at him as if he were not a boy who served coffee. She was looking at him as if he were a miracle. Who are you? She whispered. Icarus, the son of Daedalus, took a deep breath. My name, he said, is Ricky. The girl's name was Elena. She did not laugh at him. She did not call Sal to have him thrown out. She simply stared at the drawing on the napkin, and then at his face and back to the napkin. My professor said the same thing, she said, her voice full of disbelief. About the truss. He said the snow load calculation was off. He told me to redesign it. She looked at the wing structure Icarus had drawn. But he did not explain it like this. He did not draw this. This is beautiful. Ricky felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the coffee machine. It was pride. It was the old feeling, the one he had when he and his father would build a new device, a new contraption, and watch it work. It is just balance, Ricky said, his English suddenly feeling clumsy. My father, he taught me. Everything in nature has a perfect design. You just have to know how to look. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. He was the boy who worked the counter, the one with the sad eyes and the strange, quiet way of moving. He was also, apparently, a genius in engineering. Ricky, she said, testing the name. Who is your father? The question was a sharp, sudden pain. Ricky's smile faded. He quickly picked up the napkin and crumpled it in his hand. He is gone, he said, his voice flat. I must get back to work. More coffee. He turned away before she could answer, his heart hammering. He had said too much. He had shown too much. The ghost was trying to get out. But Elena did not leave. She stayed for hours. She finished her redesign of the truss, using the principle he had shown her on the napkin. When she was done, she brought her drawing to the counter, where Ricky was wiping down the espresso machine. Is this better? She asked, her voice soft. Ricky looked at her drawing. She had adapted the wing structure, creating a new support system that was both strong and graceful. It was brilliant. He nodded. A small, slow nod. Yes, this will hold. This will fly. She smiled, a bright, wide smile that lit up her face. Thank you, Ricky. You saved me. I have been stuck on this for a week. She packed up her things. I will see you tomorrow? I am here every day, Ricky said, trying to sound normal. Good, she said. See you tomorrow, Ricky. And she was. Elena came back the next day. And the day after that. The cafe became her new studio. She would sit at her back table, drawing and building small models out of paper and wood. And Ricky, in the moments he was not washing dishes or serving coffee, would watch her. She began to talk to him. Not as a customer, but as a friend. She told him about her school, the Cooper Union, a place where people learn to make art and buildings and machines. She told him about her dreams. She wanted to be an architect, a person who designed the giant glass towers that he had once thought were magic. In return, she asked him questions. He could not tell her the truth. The truth was madness. So he told her a story he had built, a story as carefully designed as one of her blueprints. My family, we came from a small island, he told her. A very small, very poor island. We did not have much. My father was a craftsman. He built things. He taught me. And the accent? She asked, her head tilted. It is from my island, he said. It was not a lie. And how did you get here? To New York. He looked down at the dishcloth in his hands. It was a bad crossing, a storm. I lost everyone. I ended up here, alone. Elena's green eyes filled with a new emotion. It was not pity. It was understanding. You are an orphan, she whispered. Ricky had learned that word. Yes, I am an orphan. Me too, she said, so quietly he almost did not hear her. My parents died when I was little, in a car crash. I grew up in foster care, in the system. I know what it is like to be alone, Ricky. He looked at her, and for the first time he did not feel like a ghost from another world. He felt like a boy who was sitting with a girl, sharing a sadness. This new connection changed him. Elena did not just talk to him about the past. She talked to him about the future. She brought him her textbooks. "You cannot just wash dishes for Sal forever," she told him. "You are too smart. Your mind, it is wasted here." He read her books on physics, on engineering, on architectural history. He read them in his basement room at night, with Skia on his lap. It was not new information. It was a recovery. It was his father's voice, speaking to him in a new language. The words were different: aerodynamics, stress load, kinetic energy. But the principles were the same that he learned that his father, Daedalus, was in these books. He was a myth, a small story in a chapter on ancient legends. They called his father a mythical inventor. "They think he is not real," Icarus whispered to Skia, his finger on the page. "They think we are a story." One evening, Elena was excited. "I have a new project," she said, her eyes shining. "A big one. It is a competition. The whole school can enter. The prize is a full scholarship and an internship at the best firm in the city." "What is the project?" Ricky asked. "We have to design a new kind of space, public space for the city. But the theme is what matters." She leaned forward, her red hair falling in her face. "The theme is flight." Ricky dropped the cup he was drying. It shattered on the floor. "Ricky!" Sal shouted from the kitchen. "You okay?" "Yes," Ricky said, his voice a hoarse whisper. He knelt to pick up the broken pieces, but his hands were shaking violently. "Ricky, what is wrong?" Elena knelt beside him, her hand on his arm. He could not breathe. Flight. The theme was flight. The gods were laughing at him. The fates were cruel. He had flown. He had fallen. And now, the one person who made him feel human was asking him to dream about the very thing that had destroyed him. "I cannot," he said, the broken pieces of the cup cutting into his fingers. "You cannot what?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Ricky, you are bleeding." He looked at his hand. The blood welled up, bright red against his skin and the white fragments of the cup. He looked at her. And the ghost, the real Icarus, the boy who had dared to touch the sun, finally broke free. "I cannot help you," he said, his voice raw with an ancient pain she could not possibly understand. "Elena, do not talk to me about flight. Do not ever talk to me about the sky." He stood up, leaving the broken pieces and his bleeding hand. He walked into the back room and did not come out for the rest of the day. Elena was not a person who gave up easily. She was an orphan from the system. She had fought for every book, every good grade, every chance she had ever been given. She was not going to let her first real friend push her away just because he had a dark mood. She waited. She waited until Sal closed the cafe for the night. The street was dark and quiet, the neon sign of the bar next door casting a red glow on the wet pavement. Ricky finally came out, his head down, his shoulders hunched inside his thin jacket. He did not have his jeans and sweatshirt on. He was wearing his old work clothes, the one Sal had given him. He had changed back. "Ricky!" She called out that he flinched, but he did not stop walking. He hurried toward his basement room. Elena ran after him, her portfolio slapping against her leg. "Ricky, wait. Please talk to me. What happened?" He stopped at the top of the metal steps that led down to his basement. He kept his back to her. "You should go home, Elena. Not until you tell me what is wrong," she said, her voice firm. "I thought we were friends. You can tell me. Was it something I said? The project? The flight theme?" At that word, his entire body went rigid. He turned around, and his face, in the dim red light, was someone she did not recognize. It was not the kind, quiet Ricky. It was a face from an ancient tragedy, pale and full of a burning, terrible anger. "Yes," he hissed, the word ablaze in the cold air. "The theme. You want to build monuments to the sky? You want to celebrate it? The sky is a liar. The sky is a killer." Elena took a step back, confused and a little frightened. "Ricky, what are you talking about? It is just a theme for a school project. It is about hope, about aspiration." "Hope?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound that was more like a sob. "I will tell you about hope. Hope is the wax that holds the feathers together. And the sun is the truth. And the truth is, it will melt. It will always melt. And you will fall." "Ricky, you are not making any sense," she pleaded. You sound, you sound crazy. Crazy? He said. He stepped closer, and for the first time he did not seem like a boy. He seemed ancient. You want to see crazy? You want to know what the sun does to people who fly? Before she could react, he turned his back to her. He grabbed the collar of his thin work shirt and, with one violent motion, ripped it open down his back. The old, worn fabric tore easily. Elena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. That in the dim, red light from the bar, she saw them. She had always thought he was just thin. She had never seen his back. It was a map of old, terrible wounds. Two enormous, branching scars, one on each shoulder blade. They were not the scars of a whip or a knife. They were wide, puckered, and unnatural, like the places where two large, heavy things had been violently ripped away. They looked, she thought with a cold, impossible shock, like the root system of a tree, or the roots of wings. My God, she whispered, her eyes wide with horror. Ricky, who did asterisk this to you? What happened? He stood there, his back to her, the cold night air hitting the ruined skin. He was shaking, not from the cold, but from the memory. My father, he said, his voice thick. My father warned me. Your father did this. Elena said, her voice filled with a new, dark anger. The craftsman? The man from your island? He did this to you. Ricky's shoulders slumped. The anger was gone, replaced by a bottomless despair. He slowly pulled the ruined shirt together. He knew what she was thinking. He knew what she had to believe. The truth was impossible. A lie was all he had. He told me not to, Ricky whispered, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. He told me not to go, but I left. There was a fire. I was burned. It was a weak story. It made no sense. But it was better than I flew too close to the sun. Elena looked at his face. She saw the pain. She saw the shame. She did not believe him. Not really. The scars were not from a fire. But she saw that he believed his own story, or that he needed to. He was trapped by whatever had happened to him. Ricky, she said, her voice soft again. She did not touch him. She was afraid he would break. It does not matter what happened. It is in the past. You are here. You are safe. Safe? He said, looking at the brick wall, the metal stairs, the dumpster in the alley across the street. I am in a cage. A warm, dry cage. But it is still a cage. I traded the sky for a basement. No, she said, her voice fierce. You traded your past for a future. You have a future, Ricky. You have a mind. A mind like no one I have ever met. You should be in my school. You should be the one designing these things. Not me. You. She grabbed his hand, the one that was not bleeding. Help me, she said. Help me with this project. I do not mean, you do not have to design a monument to the sky. Help me design something else. Something else? He asked, his voice hollow. Yes, she said, her eyes suddenly bright with an idea. Not a monument to flying. A monument to falling. A monument to surviving the fall. Ricky looked at her. He looked at her bright, determined face, and at the terrible, beautiful, impossible idea she had just spoken, a monument to surviving the fall. He thought of his father, lost in the sky. He thought of his long, terrible plunge. He thought of the alley, the cold, the hunger, and he thought of Sal, and the warm cafe, and Elena. He had survived. He had not died in the sea. He had not died in the alley. He was still here. What would it look like? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elena smiled, a small, triumphant smile. She knew she had him. I do not know, she said. But you do. Come on. Let's go to the cafe. Sal left me the key to lock up. Let's draw. They worked through the night in the silent, dark cafe, a single light over their table cutting through the shadows. The floor was covered in crumpled napkins, each one a failed idea, a ghost of a design. Elena drew towers that reached, wings that soared, structures of glass and steel that defied gravity. Ricky watched her, silent. He could not draw those. He could not design a monument to the lie that had destroyed him. It's no use, Elena said, her voice heavy with fatigue, as the first hint of gray light touched the street outside. Everything I draw, it's just a building. It's not what the theme means. It's not flight. No, Ricky said, his voice quiet but clear. He had been staring at the table, at the grains of the wood, for an hour. You are right. It is not about buildings. He picked up a fresh pen and pulled a clean sheet of paper from her portfolio. His hand did not shake. It is not about flying, he said, the words coming to him, a truth he had not known he possessed. It is about the moment after. It is not about the sun. It is about the sea. But what if the sea was not cold? What if it was not an end? What if it was a welcome? His pen began to move. He did not draw a tower. He drew a spiral. He sketched a place that did not climb, but descended. What is that? Elena whispered, watching his hand. It is a park, Ricky said. A public space, but it is built down into the earth. He drew wide, spiraling pathways, like the threads of a grand screw, sloping gently into the ground. He drew gardens on the sloping walls, plants that would hang down like green waterfalls. The paths were wide, so people could walk them without fear. It looks like a quarry, Elena said, frowning. Or a maze. My father built a maze, Icarus whispered, the name Ricky, falling away from him like a heavy coat. The labyrinth. It was a prison designed to trap a monster. It was built to make you lost. He looked at her, his eyes shining with a new, fierce light. This is the opposite. This is a labyrinth to find yourself. You cannot get lost. There is only one path, and it leads to the center. What is in the center? She asked. The heart, he said. He sketched a perfect, wide circle at the bottom. Not a statue, not a flame, a pool. A circle of black, polished stone, filled with water. So still it becomes a perfect mirror. A mirror, Icarus said. All the way down this path you are safe. You are held by the earth. You are looking down at your feet at the gardens. You are focused on the ground. But when you finally reach the center, the lowest, safest place, you stand by the pool. He looked up at her, his voice breaking with the weight of his own discovery. And it forces you to look up. You see the sky. You see all of it. But it is not a thing to fear. It is not a place to fall from. It is just a reflection, trapped in the water, safe. You can finally see how beautiful it is, because you are no longer trying to conquer it. You are just watching it, and you are safe on the ground. They worked for 2 months. Sal, seeing the fire in their eyes, gave Ricky the time off. They built the model in Elena's tiny apartment. It was beautiful. The day of the competition, the presentation hall was filled with the most famous architects in the world. The other students presented their designs. They were all magnificent. Towers of glass that looked like feathers. Structures that hung from cables, looking like they were in mid-flight. They were all celebrations of the sky. Then, it was their turn. Elena and Ricky, the girl from the system and the boy from the cafe, carried their model to the front. It was covered in a white sheet. Elena began, her voice shaking. Our project, it is about flight, but it is different. One of the judges, a famous, severe-looking woman, interrupted. Different how, miss? We have seen wings. We have seen clouds. What else is there? Ricky stepped forward. He was clean, his hair was cut. He was wearing a simple, new shirt. He was no longer Ricky the dishwasher. He was no longer Icarus the tragedy. He was Icarus the designer. You are right, he said, his voice clear and calm, filling the auditorium. You have seen monuments to the aspiration, to the reaching, to the moment of the leap. He placed his hand on the sheet. Our design, he said, is a monument to the fall, and to the survival. He pulled away the sheet. There was a gasp in the room. The model was the opposite of everything that had come before it. It was not a monument reaching up. It was a sanctuary reaching down. The deep, spiraling park. The lush, hanging gardens. The single, perfect, dark mirror at its heart. We call it the sanctuary, Icarus said, his voice resonating with an authority he did not know he had. Because true courage is not in flying. True courage is in finding the strength to land. It is a place to remind us that the ground is not our prison. It is our home. It is what catches us. He pointed to the black pool at the center of the model. We fly every day. We reach for things we cannot have. We burn ourselves on our ambitions. We fall. And this place, This is for after. This is the place that says, you have fallen, and you have survived. Now rest, and look at the sky. See? It is still beautiful. And you are safe. He finished. The room was absolutely silent. The judges stared at the model. The severe woman stood up. She walked to the model. She looked at the impossible, perfect engineering of the spiral. She looked at the boy who had designed it. You said, your father built the labyrinth. One of the judges said, looking at the notes. That is a myth. Icarus met his gaze. He did not flinch. Yes, he said. It is. He looked at Elena, and she was crying, smiling. He looked back at the judges. He no longer felt the burn on his back. He no longer felt the cold of the alley. He felt the solid ground beneath his feet. My name, he said, is Icarus. My father was Daedalus, and he taught me how to build. The severe-looking judge stared at him for a long, long moment. Then, she looked at the other judges. A slow smile spread across her face. Gentlemen, she said, her voice booming, I believe we have found our winner, and I believe we have found an architect. Icarus stood there, bathed in the bright, artificial light of the auditorium. He was not in the sun. He was on the ground. And for the first time in his long new life he was finally truly home.